Hello to everyone, and welcome to this very important panel on war and the day after in Lebanon, a feminist perspective. OneRun, the Women's UN Report Network, is very pleased to partner on this panel with American University in Beirut. And we will be hearing from women who are actually in Lebanon, though there has been some publicity on gender specific issues in the Middle East during this conflict intense time. We haven't seen much about the women and the continuing issues in Lebanon. So we have with us women who will tell us the gender lens because that is so important and it's ongoing. Our panelists told me, as an example, that this morning there were attacks. They continue. There is no peace in Lebanon or many parts of the Middle East. And so I'm going to invite Diana Abu Abbas to tell us about her experiences as a woman activist, as a woman very much engaged in gender issues in Lebanon.
Thank you, Lois, for your introduction. My name is Diana Abu Abbas. I am Lebanese, and I have been an advocate for women's rights and LGBTIQ rights since about 2 decades now. The core of my professional experience has been in sexual and reproductive health and rights and working with minority populations and underprivileged and underserved populations like the LGBTIQ plus community, refugees, migrants, and of course, women. Thinking about our topic today, I'm going to be speaking a bit about the LGBTQ plus perspective in Lebanon and the movement that has been happening for about 20 years now, since the end of the 1990s. When it comes to war, I think the LGBTQ plus movement has always been under attack. Like, we talk about times of peace and war, but we have had to fight and struggle for our existence and for our right to be present and live our lives in dignity since we were aware of our sexuality. So, in this sense, if I were to share some history about the LGBTQ plus movement in Lebanon, it started as an underground movement, and sometimes it goes public, and sometimes we go back underground. And that's because of the nature of Lebanon as a sectarian society, as a conservative society, despite the fact that it is quite progressive when it comes to human rights in the Middle East and North Africa region. But the movement found its members online, actually, and it was with the internet that we were able to group together and find each other and start organizing. In the late 90s, the movement started as in raising awareness in health, and this is an umbrella that we have always relied on to perform our activism. And I can say that the movement started very unofficially through meetings underground, and that later on led to the founding of Hilm Organization, which is an LGBTQ plus advocacy nonprofit that is actually not registered in Lebanon because its status remains pending with the Lebanese government, which later on led to the development of other organizations working on LGBTQ plus rights and sexual and reproductive health rights in particular, such as Marsa, the Sexual Health Center in Beirut, Mosaic, who works on advocacy and social support. We have the the Arab Foundation for Freedoms and Equality, and there's Labmash and many other organizations. And we have seen with the backlash how the movement has been riding the waves of the aggressive rights movement in Lebanon and the region. And we have seen at other times where we have had to retreat and acknowledge that once we are under attack, the priority for us as a movement is the safety of our community members. And in that sense, we are currently observing the situation that's happening as it unfolds, and we are constantly reacting to the political and the violent context that we are living in.
Yeah. Diana, hello. Thank you for this insight and perspective. I'm interested in the trans movement in Lebanon because in the US it's really big and it's very discriminated. And you've probably seen that in headlines. How is that? Maybe if you
Sorry.
give us your audio.
When it comes to the transgender individuals, they are, of course, part of our movement. And unfortunately, when it comes to trans women specifically, they are the ones who face the most backlash and they are the ones who face the most violence. As trans individuals, there's something that we say that you really can't hide your identity when you're a trans person, when you're transitioning, and when you are in this body that does not represent you. And it becomes apparent to people, and that's how they are able to discriminate further against you. So a lot of people are kicked out of their homes when they are young. They miss out on opportunities for education, on economic opportunities as well, which puts them in precarious situations and doesn't allow them to have the economic freedom and independence that they require to live their lives in dignity. So unfortunately, a lot of individuals have to resort to sex work. And as you know, that includes a lot of unfortunate events, and there's a lot of violence associated with this kind of work. It's especially looked down upon in society, and there is no protection for trans individuals. And as you know, you have to succumb to the clients, and we are very aware of the sexual health factors surrounding sex work and the lack of care and lack of access and lack of safety when it comes to mobility for trans individuals as well. So that is something we should highlight. But you need to know that the trans movement is embraced in Lebanon by the LGBTQ plus movement, not so much by the feminist movements. Some women's organizations are, of course, transphobic, and this has been becoming apparent, and it's a shame because as LGBTIQ plus individuals, we have always been participating on the ground in the movement against violence against women when it comes to organizing. So we expect that the feminist organizations also support trans women. And we have seen them being very, like the trans movement, we have seen them show up for the revolution in 2019 and being an active part of society when it comes to the visibility and claiming rights and asking for change in Lebanon.
Thank you very much. We are speaking to you today from the UN Commission on the Status of Women, Session 69 in New York. And Donna, I will tell you truly that the LGBTQ movement is well represented here. And your presentation was spot on. Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Amal Sharif, and she's the founder of Haltech, an association that changes stereotyped images of people with disabilities. Really important for inclusiveness and diversity, which is what our program and the Lebanese women also stand for. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Hi, everyone. My name is Amal Sharif. I'm from Beirut, Lebanon. And then I'm the founder and the manager of Haltech. Haltech, it means solution tech. We started as a startup by developing a mobile app to map places based on accessibility. And then this is how we started what we created. We established institutions that we name it Haltech. I will start by continuing what Diana was saying. We believe in intersectionality and we believe in collaborating. We Corras, a trans organization, they are hosting us in their office. And then one of our employee, or it has been two, they were trans. And then we this is how we believe, because being disabled or having disability is that it doesn't mean we have to stay away from other minorities. We are minority within other minorities. So we believe we have this value without discriminating any other group. We believe in intersectionality. This is the most important of one of our value cores. We believe in it. Haltech is a nonprofit organization founded in 2018 by individuals with disability from different professions, expertise. And this is how we established, some of us were from sports background, finance, and I myself, I'm in creative, and then it was in 2016 when I ran the elections for Beirut municipality. I was the first woman to run for the elections in 2016 in Beirut. I got 30,000 votes, and now I plan to run again this year, hopefully. Yeah, Diana, you have to come to Lebanon to be with my campaign. And then I expect, I will be running here. I faced a lot of challenge during my campaign. They were accusing me that I'm using my disability, I have polio, to get votes. This was one of the bad feeling, to feel like I'm using my disability to have vote. But it didn't stop me, because I was always an activist to report violation in the infrastructure in Beirut. And this is how I started establishing Haltech, solution tech. And then we are reworking again on the mobile app, because we believe it will solve a lot of challenges, especially in the infrastructure for educational services, schools, and then healthcare services, because this is the most lack that people with disability face within any community, accessing education and accessing healthcare services. As a grassroots, we focus on healthcare and education infrastructure. We promote accessibility and advancing gender equality, particularly for women with disabilities. By advocating for disability justice, we strive to inspire progress and build society where inclusion and equity are the norm. We can't live in a community where I have to keep fighting for having the equity and having accessibility to access schools, university services, where everything, public transportation. This is very important, and very important for us to focus on this. Harassment within the women with disability is the highest in I believe, with all the people with disability are facing harassment and abuse, but women with disability face a lot of harassment, especially even during this war. There was many cases where there was discrimination. There was women where they were faced to use a toilet with many groups, and there where she has to keep the door open. Could you imagine? This is, the women with disability are always subject to mistreated, violated, and then sometimes they don't have the voice or the power to say stop, to say enough. This is really one of the major issue that we focus in. Women with disability are always in our activities as in focus group to share their experiences, their struggle, and then we build this bridge of trust with them. So in case anything happen with them, they know they have to get back to us, and we will solve the issue if we can. If not, we will contact other organizations to establish this. Women with disability has participated in our campaign. They are the main focus, because fighting stigma, we don't fight it in like, we want you to do this and that. We use the slang in the street and make it a funny videos where we reach 600,000 view the last in our first campaign. It was 8 videos, and these videos till now people say we need these videos anymore. We need more such videos because it's created a long lasting impact. Till now, I still hear feedback from people that they need to see another videos on different topics where we have always showing case in a campaign, mom and her son talking about motherhood, getting engaged, married to a non-disabled man, where society assumes that a woman with disability, she has to get married to a disabled man. This is really, and then the assumption that because of her disability, she will not be able to reproduce kids or to give birth to kids. And then she ended up to have twins. This is really, this was like, this is the model that we are using in our campaign, in our narrative. We focus a lot on storytelling, because last year we produced also a book of 5 stories of 5 women with disability. They are telling their stories, what they have faced on social media, kind of harassment, abuse, all kind of, you can't imagine, even harassment within their small towns, villages. This is their voices, and we kept them anonymous in case to protect them. We didn't share their real name, and even when we hire staff to work with us, either they were from vulnerable group or people with disability. This is how we do our work. The priority is the marginalized group, to give them temporary job to work with us, and then people with disability, and then if we can't find, we'll go to non-disabled, non-vulnerable, and so on. This is how we work in HealthTech.
Thank you so much. Amal, would you call this, you and Diana, a compounded disability? And I should say discrimination issue? Is it a discrimination across many lines for women?
Yes, I would say it's this, yeah. And then they assume that as even myself, if I go sometimes to activities or to organization, they think that I'm going to get help and assistance without thinking that I might be professional, I might be living normal life, and it's not normal. It's living my life like everyone. So they assume that I will always be. One day it happens, like I asked someone, can you help me to get all of the sidewalks down? They thought that I'm asking for help or for begging money or so on.
Oh my. I'm also curious from our 2 speakers so far, what about the refugee population in Lebanon? And as there are attacks not only within Lebanon, but also on the border, is that highly populated with refugees? And how are they affected by the issues that you have described for us so well?
Okay, can I answer? Okay.
Sorry, Amal, not to interrupt you. I think Sarah wants to share something.
Yeah, we have
Technical
time.
support.
Yes. Hello. I have Diana, you sent me some questions here. So I wanted to, Lois, bring your attention to the chat where there are 3 questions. Would you like me to ask those? We can kind of go through those.
Yes, but we want to leave time to hear about a young woman who was raised in Lebanon and is going to show us some pictures. She now lives in UK and is part of OneRun. Perhaps Sarah, our technical expert, you tell us what is time.
Oh, yes. I think what we'll do is, Diana, should we handle some of the questions here first, and then we'll go next to Sadia?
I think we can answer the questions on refugees, and we can give the floor to Sadia. How about that?
Okay, that's great. So do you want me to go ahead and ask the questions and then the panel can answer?
Yeah, I think if we just go back to Lois's question about the situation with refugees, I think that's worthy. And we can give some information perhaps about what happened during the multitude of crises. For example, Amal, if you want to talk about the intersectionality between the refugees and the people with disability when it came to the COVID pandemic, the 2019 collapse, and the Beirut port explosion, and I will give some briefing as well afterwards.
Sounds great. We'll go ahead.
Okay, during COVID, there was discrimination. I would say it was like they will give the vaccine to Lebanese and then later the refugee, which is it's unhuman to see such behavior in the community. And then we were against, like many people they said no. And then as an organization, international organization stepped in, and then they were giving the vaccine to refugees. And then during the poor Beirut blast, there was also the relief aid. They were like allocated only to Lebanese, and sometimes they focus on certain areas while forgetting everyone. And then personally, when we got at Haltech some money to help, it was from personal connections that we gathered this amount without any from Germany, France, and families. And they said, how would you do it? I said, no discrimination. And then we noticed yesterday or a few days ago that our database, we don't mention the nationality of the beneficiary. We don't know the nationality, really. And then I was thinking, oh my God, if someone asked me, I'm pretty sure there is Lebanese, Palestinian refugee, and even migrant workers, if we don't say no to someone. So really, I don't know who is Lebanese, who is in our database. Personally, we don't ask. We never ask. And then when we got this, and then we decided that we will focus on the Quarantina area. And Diana, this is one of the marginalized group where many migrant workers, Syrian refugee, minorities living there. And then we said, no one is asking about these people. And then we were like, there is always this lack. And then a few days ago, there was an accident in Saida where the refugee camp, it was burnt down. When it was instability in Lad'i a few days ago, and then there was a refugee camp, it was burned, really. And then everyone that was civilian, they are affected the most, and especially most of the people living in this refugee camp or this neighborhoods, they are families with kids, vulnerable, they don't have the chance to access any kind of services unless there is a small healthcare, small local, to give them any support, or from organizations or so on. This is really. And then during this war, there was many refugees, Palestinian, Syrian, migrant, really everyone in this country, it was affected from the war, and then everything what is going. But then always there is when we sometimes contact individuals with disability to support them, they said, we are Lebanese. Usually I said, I don't care what your nationality. I never ask. Really, we never ask at Haltech, what is your nationality? I don't care. As long as my duty is to support them. And it happens many times that people that discriminate, even organization working on the ground, they discriminate Syrian, Palestinian, migrant workers, and even sometimes it's divided up per class, like classes in Lebanon. Even within the Lebanese community, there is discrimination. If you are from a small town, you are treated in bad way. You are from cities, you will be treated, and you have different accesses. Really, I know this, and then sometimes I see it. And sometimes I hate to be treated better than others when there is older people, there is migrants. Why do I have to be discriminate having access while we are in the same room?
Right. Thank you so much for these additional comments. I might mention that this panel on Lebanon is so important at CSW. It's going all over the world. And the reality is, I haven't seen another Lebanon panel on the list of CSW. And so thanks so much to all of you. And we have one more speaker, but thanks so much to all of you. And I wanted to say also that Outright International is here, but they didn't have a panel inside the UN building. They are off-site and mostly social. And so at least they are here gathering people of a common belief system and gaining advocacy power. Sadia, can we hear from you now? Sadia Mir is in London. She is the WUDRUN European Gender Policy Specialist. And she has many memories of Lebanon and is going to tell us her perspective. Thank you, Sadia.
Hi, hello everybody. Yes, nice to be here and good to have a Lebanon panel. I think it's really important after what we've witnessed happen in Lebanon. It's actually quite heart-wrenching. I think Lebanon's had such a strange turn of events for the last few years. It's really upsetting because it's the city and the country I grew up in, and it's very obviously close to my heart. So here I penned down some words for my childhood to kind of better understand some of the things I went through. It was an exciting time, not regardless of the war for me. And I can talk a bit about this, and then we can have, I'll tell you about my experiences of Lebanon. So this is called A Pocket Full of Splinters and Shrapnel. And here goes. War girl, you have a pocket full of splinters and shrapnel. You trade as your currency. You bargain them with the rough refugee boys. The boys are older and try and cheat you, but you know which bullet came from which faction and side, and you bargain it with pride. You do not know the heaviness of war as yet. It is a reason for school to be closed, a reason to explore a neighboring country during evacuation, and to be schooled at home, to walk the streets in safety, to hear a different dialect of Arabic. War girl, when you return to school, you hear that others did not return. Their absence is felt but never fully explained. Once the bomb blasts seem like colorful fireworks, now grow fiercer and nearer. You see the weariness in your parents' face, the constant runs to safety bunkers, and furthermore evacuations to Syria. The schools are closed again, and some will not reopen. The fighting is more intense and nearer. War girl, you have regular visits from soldiers banging on your door. You tell them your parents are not home. You are told to sell your books and give away your comics. You can only take a few to a new destination, colder and far away, a place you know well in books, a new language you do not yet master. Your parents explain that things will be different. The faces of those that come to take you there wear a smile. War girl, you really do not want to go, but you start your exile. So those are my words on the Lebanon situation and my experience of it. And I consider myself to be quite patriotic, more than most Lebanese, because we actually stuck through the heaviest of the civil war in the late 70s and kind of early 80s, I believe. So I have a right, I believe I've earned that.
Sadia, do you have a picture for us?
Yes, I do have a picture of me at school. I think Sarah has it. Maybe Sarah can share that. It's the one school I went to for the longest time because, you know, my schooling was quite erratic. Yeah, there it is. I think people can make out where I am.
That's very cute. Thank you. Do you have any other thoughts to share with us, Sadia?
Just the kind of official kind of things that happened while I was growing up in Lebanon, and also currently what's happening. I'm very much in touch with, keep an eye on what's going on. And you talk about the uptake of, all these services, and I just wonder, after the, indiscriminate bombing, who's picking up the pieces in Lebanon? How are the services being run? What is happening, especially post the bomb blast of was it 20 that awful incident that happened?
2020, yeah.
2020,
Mhm.
exactly. It's just awful, and I wonder who's dealing with it. What are the sentiments about people and those who are currently in power? So
Very,
Yeah.
very fine presentation, Sadia. I see we have a question from Lena. Would one of you like to address that?
Yeah, actually, if I can answer Sadia's question and address some of the issues we have been facing over the last few years, it would be great.
Mhm.
Going back to what you were talking about, Sadia, and especially the latest war in Lebanon, I think we paid very heavily for that war, and unfortunately, the outcome was not successful. We see that there was a lot of death, there was a lot of destruction, and it was the most vulnerable, of course, that once again suffered the most when it comes to violence. And unfortunately, there are so many limited ways where you can help people in such a time of crisis when there is no preparedness by the Lebanese government, there's no preparedness by the Ministry of Health or anybody else. Even though we knew that the war was coming, and unfortunately, we did not try to support our most vulnerable. And that has been the case since as long as I can remember. We were talking about the war that started in 1975, and we have had so many violent events that where the community needed to rely on each other, and it was mostly the nonprofit organizations that have been supporting the people, especially those who are most marginalized. If I were to go back to the past 5 years, and since the devaluation of the Lebanese pound and the economic crisis, and how everyone started losing their jobs, followed by the revolution and the instability that was happening on the political and economic level, and followed by the COVID-19 pandemic, on to most famously the Beirut blast. During that period, I was the executive director at Marsa Sexual Health Center, and what we were trying to do was try to come together so that we can support our community. We got a couple of grants from the Feminist Humanitarian Network and from a regional and global coalition that works on HIV. So we were able to get some funds that we mobilized in support of other organizations who were working on harm reduction. We were working with other organizations who had access to different types of communities than we did. And we worked collectively to gather some data and figure out who were those who were most at need, to provide them with aid when it comes to pay their rent, financial aid, or food parcels so that they can support themselves during the difficult times. And I think, like it was mentioned before, one of the most beautiful things that came out of the Beirut blast was the solidarity among all the people and the nonprofit organizations. And there were a lot of people who who invested themselves personally in delivering goods and delivering financial aid to those who were in most need of them. But we also know that discrimination prevails, especially when it comes to being a refugee or being an LGBTQ plus refugee or somebody with a disability. And that's when you see that Lebanon, despite all the crises that it goes through, is still a very sectarian and classist society, unfortunately. And I remember we had a trans woman who came over to the center, and she was in queue to receive some food parcels that were sent by Kuwait, if I'm not mistaken. And she and her roommate were kicked out of the queue because of the way she looked. They figured out that she was a trans woman, and even in times of crisis, they did not want her there. And she was banned from going to get aid. And this is something that you do not hear about often. This is a testimonial. And this is why it's very important for us to keep collecting data and gathering testimonials, especially in light of the changes that are happening in the world right now. And now we see that the Trump administration is back again, and we are still paying for the price of the backlash that we've been facing for the past 10 years.
Thank you so much, Diana, for that really clarity about, again, the compounded discrimination, which can increase during times of conflict. Sarah, do we have time for a couple questions?
Yes, we certainly do.
Okay, I want to thank Sarah Patnon, who is our tech specialist at OneRun. And she is in the background right now, but she is really making all the connections happen. So thank you, Sarah. Okay, I'll turn it over to you maybe, and you can.
I just wanted to say that we also did some work with Abad and the UN panels, and I think they were really trying hard to deal with toxic masculinity and issues like that, which was very encouraging, especially when they did that campaign for the burning the bride dresses for underage brides. Do you know that one? No, I think that's a step in a good direction. But there are other programs, I imagine, but it just seems that the damage is so colossal. It's just a shot in the dark. And like, where do you start after, endless years of sectarian civil war and then, perpetuated border wars, things like that. And the current situation, it just seems sort of so unfair as well that Lebanon always gets dragged into these sort of scenarios. That's all I can say.
If I may jump in here, I think like looking at the history and what we've been through, you're always waiting for things to get better, right? And like I think we still didn't get any release from the past 10 years where we have been facing the backlash on the from the anti-rights movement, the anti-gender rights movement as well. And now it's even getting worse with all the words that are getting banned by the new administration, the new old administration. And we are going to see that unfortunately reflected in the rest of the world. And at this time, while we are still observing the monstrosities that are happening and trying to make sense of what we can do and how to react, and when things are making us so angry, this is something I have been thinking about a lot, all the anger that I'm feeling and how to try to use it for the positive effect and trying to make it into a catalyst for me so that I can keep going and support my sisters and my friends and my fellow advocates in this combat, and how we can continue to go on and see that this is a wave. It's a wave of a backlash, and progress comes in waves. We have had a lot of gains over the past 20 years. Right now, we are facing something that's difficult, but we have to stay on track and make sure that we know that we are the lights in this tunnel. It's a very dark tunnel, but we have to keep shining and make sure that we take this anger and we transfer it into a catalyst for us to keep us going. And rather than burn ourselves down, I think we should try to burn everything else and work together on going through this phase and trying to come through and come out as victorious again, while we keep fighting against what's happening. Lois, you're muted. We can't hear you, unfortunately.
And it's really important that the messages that are reflected here reach a larger audience as well. And I'm going to ask if you all and with Lena will create like a one-pager summary of some of the key points that you've made and send it to Wanra and to me. And we will send it out to further expand the awareness of the issues of women in Lebanon during this complex time. Now, Mal, do you have any more to add?
Yes, I would love to add something about during this war when they were distributing food. It was this in these large boxes, and then I got call from people with disability. They said, "Really, did they imagine that we will be able to carry such box? We are on a wheelchair, we are on crutches, we can't carry these boxes, and then most of this food we can't use it. We don't use it. We are in need for something else like." Specific medicine to buy, specific food, specific things, and then we don't have cash on us. This was really, they said, really, we don't need these boxes. There was a lot of distribution and food waste because there was no plan how to distribute, and then most of the schools, they are inaccessible. This is why I always emphasize that schools must be accessible, because kids with disability should attend public and every regular schools. And then this is how people, they were in the streets. We have supported people in the street. Really, I felt so guilty. We couldn't find shelters, we couldn't find accommodated places, and then there was a lot of mass distributing of foods without thinking these people are in need for food or something else. This is what we did in HealthTech. We customized our relief support based on individuals' needs. Some they need money, cash money, because they wanted to pay their rent. They needed money for transportation, for food. And then people that said, we don't eat this kind of food. We don't eat this. We don't eat canned food. We need to eat proper food. Really, it was people in their, it should be planned bit better in having policies how to help and assist people with disability during crisis, and then providing toilet that they are big enough in schools and the refugee places, where privacy for women should be taken into account to accommodate them with their wheelchairs inside without take their clothes outside openly in front of everyone.
Very true. Okay, thank you so much. Sarah, how many minutes do we have?
We actually do have some time available here. Our webinar is scheduled for 90 minutes, which means that we do have until, let's see here, that would be noon Eastern time.
I think that your point about aid or supplies for people during conflict and non-conflict, it's not always culturally sensitive. And that is a huge issue. I know that there's been a great deal of cutting of aid by the current American administration. But the aid that comes, and I go to FAO and know the World Food Program, but they don't ask what people want and need on the ground. And that is key to survival anytime. Sadia, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I think generally, I mean, if you look at even disasters or, you know, climate disasters, preparedness, things that I've studied or worked on, it's the aspect of perhaps mitigation and then adaptation. And I think that kind of rule can work on across the board on different scenarios, even post-conflict, you know. I think Lebanon, actually, in Beirut, when I was growing up, the preparedness was fantastic. We would go into bunkers when the shelling or the bombing used to start. And, you know, they were really well sort of situated, usually at the American embassy, American university or places like that, or larger groups with a coalition of sort of buildings underneath. So those bunkers were fairly well created, and you know, evacuations would happen in them in a really timely and well-placed manner. I just think it's brilliant looking back. But since then, things just seem to have gotten so bad, and I think it's just a run-on of, you know, all these situations and prolonged conflict and corrupt administrations, unfortunately, that have led to such a demise. Even that blast in 2020, how that happened, it's still kind of a mystery. I know there's loads of conspiracy theories around it if you speak to Lebanese people off the record, but just the way that it happened and the impact it had. And another thing I will say is that, you know, the Lebanese structure of buildings is fantastic. I mean, you can have we would be faced very regularly with, you know, proper shelling or bombing just a sort of a few, I don't know, meters away. But the buildings really withstood. They are not like, I don't know if you've been to the UK, but the houses here, if my neighbor does something, I hear it. But in Lebanon, you could cause a riot. And the buildings, nobody would hear what on earth was going on. So, yeah, and that's a testament to the way they build. I think they used to build very well. But how things are, I haven't been back for ever, and I wouldn't know. But I think if that blast had happened somewhere else, the consequences of it, just because of the way that structures were created, would have just been a lot more in any other country, even in the UK, where we kind of pay a lot for the houses, but they're almost made of NDF, I think. Yeah.
A very important point you just brought up about the structural strength to survive some of these terrible attacks. And Amal, you have your hand up?
Yes. By the way, this war, it was really, you can't go to your shelter, because I live in a building, we have shelter, and during the civil war, we used to have it, to use it. And even during the 82 Israeli invasion to Beirut, we have used this shelter. In this war, we couldn't, people avoided to stay in the building because this kind, they used a huge bomb where even if you are in the area where it's bombed, I'm far from Dahi, where they have destroyed almost the whole neighborhood in Dahi. So I was hearing the bomb exploding till I live in Beirut, close to downtown. But even where I live, they have destroyed a full streets. There is more than 14 buildings. They took it down. It's from 50s, 60s, and then there was no place safe place. Really, there was even during this war, there was the eviction to live, evacuation to leave your place before bombing. And then for people with disability, do you know what happens to these people? They can't run. Really, they were telling me, and they were laughing. It's not something to laugh about. They were laughing, and then they said, "Aman, we didn't know what to do." We were like, and then one of them, she told me they were living. They have left their house 3 times in the same day. There was a evacuation notice to leave your place because they will bomb the area, and then they left the house and they go to the park in Beirut. And then the bombing is over, they went back to their place, to their home. And then they did this 3 times in the same day. Could you imagine? The woman, she has 5 kids. One of them is visually impaired, and she has her mom and dad, the old parents. And then she has always, when there is evacuation notice, she has to take everyone out of the house and then bring them again. This was so high risk for them. This is really, there was no safer place in Lebanon this time. And then sometimes there is no notice that you have to leave this place because they want to attack some big shot. And then they took down all the building and the civilian in this area. And this building, if they want to attack just one as target for them. Really, it was really atrocity across all Lebanon without having a safe place. Sometimes you don't know where to go.
The issues that have been brought forward in this panel really shed a light on what's going on in Lebanon, because we don't hear about it otherwise. And I'm curious about girls, because one run is very focused on the full lifespan of women, females. And so how are girls, especially girls in their teens, managing with this kind of chaos and crisis?
If I can jump in here, Lois, just to go back to what Amal was saying about the evacuation notices that people were getting. It was, for those who don't know, it was a notification on Twitter. It was a tweet on X from the Israeli army, and that's how they were supposed to leave their homes. And it was often in the middle of the night, and like Amal had said, they used to target a whole building or the whole street just to kill one personality. And I think that just shows how violent the war is. And I don't want to romanticize and say that if the explosion happened somewhere else, it would have been much worse. I want to go back to the Lebanese government and the neglect of the citizens in Lebanon, especially when the ammonium nitrate was stored at the port at one of the hangars. And I don't want to go into the political details of why it was stored there, we all know. And I want to say that there is no excuse for what happened, and I really support that the justice movement for revealing what actually happened at the Beirut port persists, and that we get justice to the victims. And in this sense, I think when it comes to Lebanon and the latest war that has been happening, I think we are all responsible wherever we are in the world. Like, I'm Lebanese, but I'm not living in Lebanon right now. But I am also responsible, as other people are, to be aware of the situations that are happening in different countries, especially as we have so much access to information right now. But I think for people living in Western countries, it's also the responsibility for us to look at independent sources and not just go to our governmental radio stations or TV stations or news sources, and to make sure that we get a diversity of media platforms to show what is actually happening in a critical eye, and for us to be critical of ourselves and the things we know, and to unlearn what we know about different populations and different cultures in the world.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
really true that we are one. We are sisters. And what's going on right now, we cannot distance from and say, oh, that's happening over there. We need to reach out to each other because some of the things you have discussed are going on in many different places, but specifically in Lebanon, related to the, again, compounded discrimination. Sadia, you have a poem for us?
I don't have another poem. I am starting one on Lebanon. I've got the first few lines. It's a different one. It's a more fun one. But I just want to say that I'm not justifying the blast. I'm just giving it a testament to the buildings, and I'm not at all, condoning what was happening. I've already talked about the corrupt administrations that have led to these kind of things. So I'm not saying that, this is, I'm not romanticizing it. It's just a matter of fact about what I remember of the buildings and what I hear of people saying, that it would have been a lot worse, perhaps, but that's not saying it's okay.
Okay, thank you so much. I know that we will keep in touch, that you will summarize some of the key points that we can send out in writing, that Lena Abu Habib has talked to us at One Run Women's UN Report Network about further collaboration. And I can only say that your voices are heard today in every country of the world. And this has been exceedingly important. Maybe next year you'll be here, but today things are going on and a real conflict that is not at all solved. Families have lost loved ones, friends, homes. We haven't spoken about the health issue, which is another major problem for women and girls. So I can only thank you for coming forward today and telling us your realities about the situation in Lebanon during the war, and hopefully after the war, we will have better news. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.